calm him down, but Gallius threatens him with his sword. At that moment, the king joins them, saying he won't permit disturbances in the palace, and Gallius bows to him, but he tells the king that he won't accept a human as their queen. The king becomes upset, but Sari tells Gallius that she understands why he feels that way, because they never had a human queen before. She takes them to the courtyard, telling them about its history, but Gallius makes a loud noise, causing her to forget her script. Gallius realizes that she just memorized her lines, so he disparages her, telling her that she disgusts him as he starts walking away. During dinner, Sari leads the toast, but she doesn't drink the wine that Gallius brought with him. Gallius inquires about this, and Anubis explains that beast wine disagrees with her. Gallius tells her that she isn't fit to be queen, saying humans are unreliable, so his servant tries to stop him, but Gallius hits him, saying he can't eat while looking at his ugly face. Gallius states that Sari also makes him lose his appetite, ordering her to leave, so Sari excuses herself, making her way back to the king's quarters. Back in the room, the king gives her his food, revealing that he wasn't able to eat anything because he couldn't stand Gallius's behavior. Sari tells the king not to worry about her, because she's used to being treated that way, saying she can't leave him with a foul temper, so she needs to turn things around at the ball. Sari tells him that she's done eating the food, so she wants him to eat her leftovers, but the king licks her instead, asking her to show them that he was right to choose her. That evening, Sari asks Gallius to dance with her, but he declines, and Anubis informs him that they will cancel the ball if he doesn't dance with Sari. Gallius orders his ugly servant to dance with her instead, and they dance together, as the servant asks Sari to forgive him, thinking his ugly appearance disgusts her. But Sari tells him this isn't the case, saying he appears to be in so much pain. The servant reveals that he received his wounds during the last war, where he was burned by humans. He tells her that war has divided humans and beasts, so she will have a hard time as the queen of the beasts, wondering why she even wants to be their queen. Sari states that she just wants to be with the king, wanting to help him in any way she can. They appear to be enjoying their time together, but Gallius suddenly hits his servant, saying it's not fun watching him befriend a human, and he pulls out his sword. However, Sari gets in the way, as Gallius tells her to move, reminding her that she'll never be the legitimate queen if she fails the ordeal. He gives her a choice, saying she can either make the smart move for her future by moving away, or be destroyed with his ugly servant. Sari chooses to give up her future as queen, and Gallius is surprised by her decision. The servant reminds her about her goal to stay by the king's side, but Sari states that she can't be a queen if she ignores the people who are getting hurt. Sari starts questioning Gallius's identity, saying he bullies people who can't fight back, so she wonders if he's really the legendary sea god. Gallius swings his sword, but the ugly servant stops him, telling him he's done enough. He suddenly bows down, and we learn that the ugly servant is actually the real Gallius, and the shark is his grandson named Jaws. Gallius explains that the king has improved the quality of their lives, but they went to the palace because they heard news that he wants to take a human as his queen. They wanted to test Sari by putting on an act, claiming that the entire deception was his idea, so he begs the king to spare his men from punishment. However, Jaws implores the king to punish him instead of Gallius, because their race can't survive without him. Sari asks the king if they still need to be punished, saying nothing bad happened to her, but the king states that they deserve to be punished. He orders Gallius and his men to swear perpetual allegiance to him, telling them to defend the realm for him. Gallius thanks the king for his mercy, swearing allegiance to the king and his queen, and they sail back to their home. The next day, Anubis tells the king that Sari is now disqualified from queenship because she gave up her future as queen. The king states that she performed her duties well, but Anubis still refuses to consider the ordeal a success. The king returns to his quarters, and Sari notices that something is bothering him, but he doesn't tell her about it, thinking it will make her regret her actions. Anubis reprimands two guards for being noisy, and as he walks away, he overhears the guards talking about Sari, thinking humans aren't bad. But Anubis doesn't share their sentiment, thinking Sari tricked the king to save her own skin, so he wants to get rid of her. While walking, he stumbles upon Sari, and he leads her to a nearby library. As she starts searching for a book, Anubis realizes that they're alone in that area, so he thinks about killing her. He is about to do it, but Sari pulls out a book, causing the other books to fall on Anubis. Sari checks up on him, telling him she'll look for the book herself, but Anubis offers to help her out. Sari appears to be oblivious of his intentions, so he wonders if she's stupid as he thinks about proceeding with his plan, but he suddenly passes out. In a flashback, we see a young Anubis refusing to go to his father's funeral. His servant tells him that he is about to become the successor, but Anubis doesn't want this because this would make him the royal family's lapdog. We learn that his family has served the royal family for generations, and his father died trying to protect the king from assassins, but none of the royals mourned his death, seeing him as just another pawn. One day, he meets up with the king, who thinks he's too young to assume his father's duties, so he orders Anubis to look after the prince. He formally introduces himself to the prince, and he starts serving him, but Anubis sees the prince as a fool, so he thinks he could take control after the prince succeeds the throne. Anubis falls ill, and he overhears the servants talking about how weak he is, wondering if he will be able to succeed his father. This makes Anubis upset, because he doesn't want to be like his father, as he remembers that his father never visited him when he was sick. At that moment, he feels a presence, and he realizes that the prince is in his room, checking up on him. The prince reveals that no one saw him enter, as he gives him a basket of healthy foods, telling him to eat plenty and get well. Anubis wonders why he's doing this, and the prince reveals that he is worried about him. Anubis is surprised to hear this, because he wasn't expecting the prince to be concerned about his servant. The prince reminds him that his father saved the king, and he is really grateful for this, saying he loves his father. Anubis tells him to leave the room, but suddenly, two beasts enter the room, and they are both taken away. Anubis wakes up inside a cave, where the kidnappers thank him for helping them catch the prince. They talk about taking the king's head, and Anubis realizes that they are the assassins who killed his father. Anubis bites one of them, telling him to give his father back, but the assassin pushes him back, and tells him that the members of his family die as the shadows of royalty. They think fate must have brought him to them, because their plan is to kill him and hold the prince hostage. One of them is about to kill him, but the prince protects him, which surprises Anubis. The prince stands against the assassins, as Anubis tells him to stop, but the prince states that it's a king's duty to protect everyone. He thinks that if he can't even protect a friend, then he wouldn't make a good king. The prince unleashes his aura, causing rocks to fall on the assassins, but he suddenly collapses, so Anubis checks up on him. The prince is happy that Anubis is okay, and this causes him to cry, as he starts dragging the prince away, until they are rescued by a search party. Back in his house, his servant tells him that the prince made a plea with the king, telling him not to hold Anubis accountable, because the prince didn't want to tarnish his family's reputation. Anubis realizes that he has found the king he wants to serve, so he visits the prince, apologizing for failing to protect him, and devoting himself to making the prince the best king. Back in the present, Anubis wakes up, and Sari tells him that he collapsed in the library. She is about to touch him, but he slaps her hand away, because he doesn't want to accept her as queen, saying he doesn't trust her. However, Sari doesn't seem to care, telling him that the king is worried about him. She tells him to think about her next ordeal, and she leaves the room. During their next meeting, Anubis states that Sari has succeeded in her ordeal, surprising everyone in the room. He has decided to give Sari a chance, wanting to see if she deserves the king's heart. Sari sees the statues of the first king and his queen consort, and Klops reveals that the first king was the hero who united the beasts. Sari wonders why she hasn't been able to enter this area before, so Klops explains that this is a sacred place, and it's only open during certain occasions like the Grand Consecration. The Grand Consecration is an event where the people gather for a celebration, which the king will lead while wearing the first king's clothes. Sari makes her way to the king, and she sees him trying on the clothes. He orders everyone but Sari to leave the room, and he reveals that a storm is going to drive the miasma away from the realm, so they're going to have another night of revelation. That evening, Sari looks after the king in his human form, as he reveals that he is always nervous before he faces the people, because they might learn about his secret, but he feels better when he's around Sari. The next day, the beasts gather for the Grand Consecration, but the king is still in his human form, because the miasma still hasn't filled the air. The king knows that he will regain his beast form, but it will take time, and the Grand Consecration is about to begin. At the venue of the event, Anubis learns that the king is nowhere to be found. He recalls that no king has ever been late for the event, so he orders the servants to look for the king. The servants claim that they have searched all areas, but the judge named Set suggests searching the underground chamber, saying the king must be meditating before the event. They enter the chamber, but they realize that it's empty, and we learn that the king used a secret passage to escape. They sneak past the guards, but they are about to be spotted, so Sari distracts them. Jorman asks her about the king's whereabouts, and she tells him that she's also looking for the king, but she couldn't find him there, so the guards walk away. Sari and the king make their way back to the underground chamber, where the king starts transforming into a beast, but he thinks that he won't be able to make it on time for the grand consecration, so he starts to think that he's not a good king. Sari tells him that he's a great king, and at that moment, the king senses a presence, so Sari leaves the room to buy time for him. She sees Set standing at the entrance, and he tells her that he senses magic in that room. Sari tells him that the king is concentrating, but Set calls her a liar, saying he's concerned about the king's safety, and asking her to open the door. Sari refuses to cooperate, so Set orders a guard to restrain her. As they open the door, they see the king in his beast form, and Set wonders what he's been doing all this time. The bell rings as the grand consecration begins, and Set tells him that he doesn't have enough time to dress up, but the king says he will go without it. At the venue, the beasts wonder why the king isn't there, because the king is always on time for the event. Anubis starts to panic, ordering the servants to cancel the ceremony, but at that moment, they see the king riding Gwibber, and he stands before everyone wearing his usual cloak. The beasts wonder what's going on. He tells the people that he has cast off the first king's armor, saying he respects tradition, but he reminds them about his duty to serve the realm. The king explains that he can't fulfill his duty by following his ancestors' footsteps, so they need to make changes for them to move forward, promising to lead them to a brighter future. The crowd cheers for the king, and Anubis tells him that he made a good speech, but he wonders why the king didn't inform him about his bold plan. The king states that it's because he would have objected, saying Sari gave him the idea for his speech. Anubis admits that he's impressed, and Sari wonders why he still hasn't given her an ordeal. At the conference room, Anubis tells her that he has no ordeals to give her, saying she will now take her place as the acting queen consort. Anubis asks her to perform the queen's public duties, saying that if she can do so without incident until the next grand consecration, she will be recognized as the queen consort in full. Anubis warns her that her public presence will be met with protest, and he will send her back to the human realm if she fails to perform her duties. He gives her an option, saying she could decline the position of acting queen consort, so that they can find a wife for the king, and she can stay in the palace as the king's pet. Sari takes her time to think about this, and Bennu tells her to accept the position, thinking she's the only one who can make the king great. Sari makes up her mind, as Bennu transforms into a phoenix, pushing her to the king's arms. She tells the king that she will take the position of acting queen consort, and the king is happy to hear this, saying he will share responsibilities with her. After some time, envoys arrive from all over the kingdom, wanting to talk to the king about the acting queen consort, but the king orders his servants to turn them away, because Sari still hasn't done anything. Amit visits Sari, as she tries on her new clothes, because Anubis told her that her normal clothes were too shabby for a queen's work. Amit tells her that she's so composed, because the kingdom is in turmoil, but Sari knows that brooding will do nothing, so she's just going to do what she can. As Amit walks around the palace, she overhears royal guards talking about subduing a band of rebels, and this makes her realize that Jorman is undertaking perilous missions. She realizes that both Sari and Jorman are faced with challenging tasks, so she creates charms for both of them, thinking it will give them protection. The next day, Amit overhears Jorman prohibiting a royal guard to march with them, because he knows that the guard has a family. The guard asks Jorman if he will ever marry, but Jorman tells him that he is too focused on his duties, so he has no intention of getting married. Amit gives Sari an amulet, and she notices that Amit is holding onto another one, asking her who it's for. Amit tells her that it's for Jorman, as she shamefully admits that she wants Jorman to notice her. But Sari tells her that it's nothing to be ashamed of, saying they aren't so different, because she feels greedy for wanting to stay with the king despite being human, and she tells Amit that she should also be greedy. Amit rushes to Jorman, and she gives him the amulet, saying she imbued it with charms to protect him during his mission. Jorman accepts it, promising to return from his mission unscathed so that her reputation won't be tarnished, and Sari is happy to see this. While she is walking around the palace, the king tells her that her first duty as acting queen has been decided. They ride a carriage to the vassal state called Sarbal, as the king tells her that the Sarbal's ruler, Tet, and his consort Kalra, have a newborn son named Kalkara. As acting queen consort, she must give Kalkara her blessings, saying Osmargo hasn't had a queen for years, so that task was performed by the priestesses for many years. Meanwhile, Kalra begs Tet to refuse the rite of blessing, because she doesn't want a human to touch her son, but Tet reminds her that they're a vassal state, so they must abide by Osmargo's customs. They arrive at Sarbal, and Tet welcomes the king to their state. Sari introduces herself as the acting queen consort, saying she will give their son her blessings. Kalra gives her a cold stare, saying their son is not feeling well, but he should be ready to receive the blessing tomorrow. During dinner, Sari is treated as a proper guest, but she drops her fork, and she suddenly starts to feel dizzy. The king notices that something's wrong, so he stands up, saying he's tired so he will have to rest early. He brings Sari with him to their room, where Sari reveals that Kalra's actions remind her of her parents, who raised her as a sacrifice, saying she could hardly breathe because of it. The king cuddles her, telling her that he doesn't know what to say, so he just imitated her actions, and this makes her feel better, knowing that the king is at her side. The following day, Sari is about to give Kalkara her blessings, but he suddenly starts crying, so Kalra asks to postpone the blessings. Sari agrees to this, as Anubis notes that Kalra is fond of her only son, so he suspects that she is planning to avoid the rite of blessings at any cost, wondering what Sari will do to fulfill her duty. While outside, Sari offers to soothe Kalkara, but Kalra tells her that she'll take care of it, asking her to have a look around the palace in the meantime, and Kalra's daughter, Tetra, volunteers to show Sari around. After Kalra leaves, Tetra immediately calls Sari ugly, saying that must be why her mother doesn't want Sari to hold Kalkara. Tetra claims that she can help Sari, but she must first become her minion and obey everything she says. Sari plays along, as Tetra turns her into a plaything, but Sari appears to be enjoying it. Tetra orders Sari to be her horse, so she gets down on all fours, telling her to climb aboard. Tetra asks Sari what's wrong with her, thinking she's just doing it to gain Kalra's favor, but Sari doesn't seem to care, saying she was having so much fun that it slipped her mind. Sari starts carrying her around, but Tetra calls her an idiot, as she reveals that Kalra doesn't care about her. Kalkara is the heir that her parents always wanted, so all of her elder sisters were married off, and she knows that the same thing will happen to her in the future, thinking Kalra wants to get rid of her. But Sari disagrees, saying Kalra loves her, but she doesn't know how to show it. Tetra still thinks she's an unwanted child, and she swiftly makes her way to the tallest tower in the palace, planning to take her own life while the king is there. Sari catches up to her, telling her not to do it, as the king watches them, but Tetra sees her life as irrelevant. Sari states that she wants to play with Tetra again, but she remembers how her mother only stopped crying after she gave birth to Kalkara, thinking her birth didn't make a single person happy. She notices that everyone is now staring at her, and this makes her feel good, because her last act is going to make an impact. At that moment, Kalra arrives, and Sari helps Tetra realize that she is only doing this to grab her mother's attention. Tetra takes a step back, and she starts falling, as Sari jumps after her, holding onto her as Gwibber is summoned, saving them from certain death. Sari tells her not to try it again, as she kisses her forehead, saying she is glad that she was born. Hearing this, Tetra starts crying, as she hugs onto Sari. Kalra realizes that she was too busy with Kalkara, so she never had the chance to hug Tetra like that, and Tet apologizes to the king for the unsightly spectacle, but the king tells him to prioritize his daughter instead of placating him. Tetra lands safely, and Kalra immediately hugs her, asking Tetra to forgive her, as she thanks Sari for saving her daughter. They proceed with the rite of blessing, where Kalra allows Sari to bless her son. Anubis still refuses to accept Sari as the queen, but he now recognizes her ability to change others. That evening, we see Sari spending time with Tetra, who reveals that she likes Anubis, thinking they would make a good match, because his blood is stronger, so it will allow her to bear children from his race. We learn that the beast's children take after the parent with the stronger bloodline, and Tetra tells Sari that she will have to bear the king's children in the future, so she needs to become familiar with that concept. As she tries to sleep, the king visits her, telling her that they need to talk. He takes her to a secluded place, and they discuss the king's duty to produce an heir, but he knows that the blood in his veins are different, so he isn't sure if he will be able to love his children, revealing that his parents didn't love him either. In a flashback, we learn that the king was raised with no mother and siblings, and his father treated him harshly, locking him up in a cell during the Night of Revelations. But despite this, he still thought that his father was just raising him to become a fine king. While on his deathbed, his father grabs onto him, telling him that he doesn't want to pass the throne to him because he has filthy blood in his veins. His father reveals how much he hates him, but he suddenly coughs up blood and passes away. The priests thought that his father wanted to hug him before he died, but this is far from the truth. He later learns that his father was mentally ill, but this illness was never revealed to the public, and to this day, he still doesn't know why his father had a child with a human, but he curses his own blood, saying he doesn't want to pass it to his heirs. Sari starts crying, knowing that the king sees his human blood as a curse, so the king cheers her up, telling her that he wasn't able to choose the blood he was born with, but he chose her, saying her presence is a blessing to him. He promises to protect their future children, telling her that he wants her as his queen, as he kisses her. They leave Sarbal, and the king tells Sari not to push herself too hard, because she has just completed her first task. Back in their palace, the king tells Sari to visit the troops stationed in the city of Magia, but he can't accompany her for this task, so she needs to travel alone. The king explains that he didn't want Sari to go alone, but Anubis told him that he needs to visit his dying friend, and the appointment of Magia's ruler needs to be confirmed in the royal presence. Sari accepts the task, telling the king not to worry, because she can handle it alone. The king visits Sari as she packs her things, and she reveals that she is nervous, saying she isn't used to being away from him, but she needs to prove that she can handle the job on her own, so that she can become a good queen. The king leaves the palace, and Anubis tells Sari that she will need a new guard for her trip. He states that it's time for her to pick a captain for the queen's guard, who will serve as her right-hand man, but nobody volunteered to serve her because she's human. However, a Hyenian suddenly steps on Anubis, and he volunteers to be the queen's guard, introducing himself as Lanto. Anubis advises Sari to choose her right-hand man carefully, saying Lanto is too rude to be the queen's guard, and suggesting that they should test his skill in combat, but Lanto suddenly slices his mask, threatening to show off his skills on Anubis. Sari stops him, and she accepts him as the captain of the queen's guard. They make their way to Magia, as Lanto tells the driver to change route, claiming there's a shortcut. Sari asks him why he volunteered to be her guard, so he tells her that he just wanted to be promoted to captain, because it's a high rank for a commoner. He knew that it would be easy to get the position, but he still can't believe that he was the only volunteer, thinking he got lucky because she's human. At that moment, they are attacked by a group of sand serpents, and Sari is about to get eaten, but Lanto saves her, easily defeating the monsters. The guards blame Lanto for their encounter with the sand serpents, thinking he deliberately led them there when he ordered them to change route, but Sari stops them, telling them not to fight each other. Lanto wonders if she finds him suspicious, and Sari tells him that she doesn't know him well enough to doubt him. Lanto reveals that the guards were right about him, saying he wanted them to encounter the sand serpents because he wanted to prove himself by defeating them, but he promises to keep Sari alive, knowing he would be in trouble if she dies. Sari chooses to trust Lanto, telling him that he can use her to make a name for himself, but he should never put other people in danger again. Lanto accepts her offer, and they reach the city of Magia, where the soldiers talk about Lanto because he's a Hyenian. Lanto notices this, so he calls them impudent, telling them about his position, and saying that he outranks them. The captain of the troops, Tyrene, orders his men to return to their posts, and tells Sari to address his men at once, because they don't have enough time. Sari appears before the soldiers, introducing herself as the acting queen consort, and telling them that the king has a message for them. She states that their services are needed by the kingdom, so they should be proud of their roles as soldiers, and perform their duties with discipline. She implores everyone to support the king, as she ends her speech. Cyclops thinks she did a good job, but Lanto tells her that she needs to be more authoritative, because she is the highest ranking person in that area. She meets up with the ruler of Magia named Braun, who tells her that they will hold the signing ceremony tomorrow morning. He explains that there is an anti-monarchist insurgency in the land, and the chaos was prolonged because they have no ruler, but the signing ceremony should make the rebels settle down. That evening, we see the soldiers accusing Lanto of being an anti-monarchist because he's a Hyenian. Lanto prepares to take them on, but Sari stops him, asking them what's happening. The soldiers explain that Lanto looks suspicious, telling her that she must not know about the Hyaenians, but she defends Lanto, telling them that she knows how the Hyaenians betrayed the kingdom in the past, but she thinks it has nothing to do with him. The soldiers apologize for their behavior, but they tell her that they don't trust her. After they leave, Lanto reveals that the last king executed innocent Hyaenians, so he wanted to avenge them by destroying the royal family. He warns Sari that he can lie with a straight face, so she shouldn't trust him, but Sari thinks he's incredibly honest, saying he's not the type of person who can fool people with a clear conscience, so she chooses to trust him. Lanto is touched by her words, and the next day, Sari enters his room, but she can't find him there. She hears someone screaming for help, and we learn that Bronn has been attacked by someone. Bronn survives the attack, and he describes his attacker as a hooded man with one eye. He was able to tear out the assailant's fur, but its color is unremarkable. The officials begin to wonder how the attacker entered the building, asking Tyrene to explain what happened. At that moment, a soldier speaks up, saying he can name the culprit. Lanto enters the room, and the soldier immediately accuses him of attacking Bronn. The officials think he fits the description, so they are convinced that he is guilty, as the soldiers surround him. A soldier asks him what he was doing last night, so Lanto tells them that he fell asleep on top of the building, but they see this as a flimsy excuse. The soldiers are ordered to arrest Lanto, so they charge at him, but Sari gets in the way, saying she will prove Lanto's innocence. The soldiers don't trust her, thinking she will frame someone to help Lanto escape, but Tyrene offers to accompany her, as he takes responsibility for what happened. Lanto is detained until he's cleared of suspicion, and they start looking for the culprit. In the dungeon, Klops tells Lanto that Sari believes in him, as Lanto thinks about Sari's strange behavior, because nobody has ever protected him like she did. In a flashback, we learn that the Hyaenians are forced to live apart from the other beasts, but even the Hyaenians cut Lanto and his mother off, because his father is not from the Hyaenian district. His mother is dying of a disease, and Lanto buys medicine for her, using the money he worked so hard to earn. But as he makes his way back, he encounters two soldiers, who accuse him of stealing the medicine. Lanto explains that he bought it, but they won't believe him, and they proceed to confiscate it. He tries to take it back, but the soldiers knock him down, walking away as Lanto begs them to give it back. Because of this, his mother dies, and he gets the idea that rank is important, thinking it's the reason why the soldiers treated him that way. Back in the present, Lanto realizes that he's a liar, because he told Sari not to trust him, but he always wanted someone to believe in him. The next day, Lanto is released from prison, after the culprit has confessed to his crimes. Sari reveals that she used the fur they collected as evidence, and we learn that humans can distinguish colors better than beasts. Sari went around matching the color of the fur with the other beasts, until they were able to find the species that it belonged to. Then they gathered the members of that species, and apprehended the one who behaved suspiciously. A background check reveals that the culprit is an anti-monarchist, and his goal is to prevent the signing ceremony from taking place. They decide to proceed with the ceremony, and Bronn is appointed as the ruler of the city. Sari thanks Tyrene for helping her prove Lanto's innocence, hoping to see him again in the future. However, Tyrene thinks that won't be possible, because his men abandoned their posts, allowing the culprit to enter, and he knows this is a grave failure on his part, so he's going to lose his position as captain. The captain bids her farewell, and Lanto reveals that he just wanted to climb the ranks because he didn't want to be abused by the people in authority, but he is grateful since she believed in him, swearing loyalty to her. They return to Osmargo, where Sari rests after their journey, as Lanto is presented to the king as the captain of the Queen's Guard. The king asks him if he's a Hyaenian, so he boldly asks the king if that's a problem, saying he won't stab the king in the back, because he doesn't really care about him. Anubis tells him to watch his tongue, but Lanto states that he doesn't even work for the king, and Anubis is annoyed by his behavior, reminding him of Sari when she first arrived. They start to argue, but the king roars at them, causing Lanto to tremble in fear. He asks Lanto if he is proud of his own blood, and Lanto tells him that he's proud to be a Hyaenian, saying he doesn't hate himself for who he is, as he states that Sari is the only one who gets to boss him around, and the king accepts him as the captain of the Queen's Guard, telling him to be her knight. Jormund leads his men against the rebels, saving the villagers from being slaughtered. He returns to the palace, and he reports that there are 0 casualties, but the king notices that there's something wrong with him. As he walks around the palace, he stumbles upon Amit, and he tells her that there is something he wants to tell her, causing her to get flustered. He takes her to a terrace, where he returns the amulet, saying it protected them, but he feels unworthy of it, so he wants her to give it to someone else.